Welcome back to the college lineup. I'm Eli.
And I'm Carson, and it's great to be back for episode number 19, Eli. We're doing it from separate locations today. We've had a busy week, but still wanted to get on here and talk about some games. And we want to talk about this SEC basketball tournament that just wrapped up. Another busy day of sports today as
Yeah.
March Madness started. So we've already had a crazy day of round one games, and that is something we'll talk about in a couple days when we do our
Yep.
next episode number 20. But for right now, let's go ahead and hit on this SEC basketball tournament. Eli, what do you say?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me pull it up here. All right.
All
So
righty.
to start us off, we had the first game of the weekend or week, kind of, whenever it started, whatever. We had LSU versus Kentucky. This one was a little closer, too close for comfort, some might say. Obviously, Kentucky did pull this one out. I'm not sure. I didn't pull it up, but I think we both had Kentucky to win this game. So not really a surprise there. Well, it shouldn't have been a surprise. But LSU did make it a close game. Carson, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. A little close to comfort, as expected with both of us. Kentucky did take the cake here, but 5 point game really, really made it close. Made some people think there for a minute, but ultimately, no surprise here in game one that Kentucky wins here.
Yep. Yep, and there's not much to say to it. It was just a good old fashioned SEC game, which is going to be with most of these because obviously they are all SEC games. But moving on to game two, Mississippi State and Auburn. I actually think that I picked Mississippi State to win this game. Um, I think, if not, I know Carson did pick Mississippi State to win this game. So unfortunately, we were both wrong, or I know at least Carson's was wrong for a fact. I just don't know for sure if that's who I picked. We'll
I'm,
go
I'm,
back.
I'm pulling it up right now. I
Okay,
believe you did, Eli.
I
Yes,
think you
we
ended
both
up
took
convincing
Mississippi
me to go
State.
with
We
that.
both took Mississippi State.
Okay.
That's my fault. Yeah, I spoke too highly of them before that tournament started.
Yeah, I really thought that they could pull it out. It was close for a little while. Ultimately, they lost by 18 points. So not the best look for Mississippi State there. They obviously did not make the NCAA tournament, but that was Auburn. And as we get into a little bit further in this bracket, Auburn really tried to make a push to try and push their luck and make the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they did not, or fortunately, Carson would probably err on the side of fortunately they didn't make it because obviously, as Alabama fan, he probably didn't care for them to make it. But nonetheless, they didn't do enough. Did get the first seed in the NIT tournament. They were actually losing at halftime, but they were able to pull it out against, I think it was Samford. So overall, not a super interesting game. But Carson, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. If you listen to episode number 18, you know that I said Mississippi State was my sleeper team for the SEC tournament. Now, granted, I thought Auburn would come out and just kind of give up on their season. So props to Auburn for at least giving their season a fighting chance here. They came out and played well. This was a state team that had a really solid year. They had more talent than their record showed. Hubbard's a great guard. It'll be interesting to see what he does next year and the years to come. But ultimately, I did say on episode 18, I expect Auburn to come out swinging because their season is on the line. They came out swinging, put a great game together. Like you said, got the first seed NIT tournament. Was losing at the half, but ultimately did pull it out against South Alabama at home the other night. So,
It
yeah,
was
both
so.
of us took the L on here. Um, yeah, I'm not surprised Auburn got the win here, but my better judgment told me to go with State. So a little disappointed in my pick there, but that's all right.
Yeah, it is what it is. Obviously, we don't claim to be the smartest people in the room. So you take our information and take our advice or suggestions, um, uh, you know, whatever you use there. Yeah, take them with a grain of salt is what I'm trying to say. Um, but overall, again, interesting game. But nonetheless, let's move on to the real hot topic of the SEC tournament, which is the Ole Miss Rebels here, knocking off a couple good teams and really having having a really good chance to make the SEC championship, but came up short. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it was Ole Miss versus the number 10 SEC seeded Texas. And Ole Miss pulled out the win by 10. A little surprising. Yes, Ole Miss had shown some streaks of greatness throughout the season. They only were 4-14 in the SEC. So obviously, SEC tournament, you obviously think, oh, they're not going to be able to perform. Well, they proved everybody wrong there. And had a really good games. Their leading scorer, Malik Dia, actually had 23 points, went 9 for 18 from the field and 4 of 7 for free throws. Not bad. Texas's leading scorer was Swain, went 4 for 9 from the field and 13 of 14 from free throw range. This looked like it was going to be a shootout. Ended up not being a super high scoring game, but Ole Miss actually scored 41 points in the first half. But they slowed down a little bit and actually got outscored by Texas by 1 in the second half. But obviously, with a 10-point loss, it was not enough for Texas to pull that out. So, Carson, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, big shock of the tournament here for sure. We both took Texas here, and we're pretty confident in that pick, I would say. Ole Miss over the past couple of years has not been by any means too competitive in SEC play. I mean, we're talking about a team here that went 4-14 in the regular season in conference play and was only better than LSU by 1 game from being the very bottom team of the conference this year. So also a team that lost to Texas earlier in February, first week of February, they lost by double digits. So being able to come to this tournament, this environment, this mutual field, and just being able to show that they can compete and they do have some fire in them was a shock to me personally. If I were to go through all of my round 1 picks for the tournament, I would say this was my most confident pick. I know we mentioned State a game ago, but ultimately this was my confidence pick, was Texas beating this Ole Miss team. And I would have honestly thought it would have been reversed and Texas would have won by probably double digits. So, well, that's part of the tournament. That's part of the fun. So ultimately, it makes for a great SEC tournament when things happen that you don't expect. So shout out to Ole Miss and just an all-around great win.
Yep. One other thing too that I wanted to add that I was just thinking about this. Obviously, we're going to talk about NCAA tournament next episode a little more, but actually right now, actually yesterday or 2 days ago, I think it was yesterday, Texas actually won the play-in game. And they're actually playing today, and they were winning last I checked. So although they struggled and lost in the first round against Ole Miss in the SEC tournament, they've turned it around and made a pretty good run so far in the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament. So they might have been down in the SEC tournament, but they were definitely not out overall. But moving on here, we actually have South Carolina versus Oklahoma. Not an upset. And I think me and Carson both saw this one from a mile away. Wasn't ever a game really. Oklahoma did win by 12, so not a blowout, but it did become a little bit more of a shootout. South Carolina hadn't been too good all season. Again, like a couple other teams, they only won 4 SEC games the whole season. Oklahoma started out hot, finished the season not super hot, but still like a good SEC team. And they did obviously pull it out against South Carolina here. Not much to say. First half, it was tied at 42. So after halftime, going into the second half, Oklahoma outscored South Carolina 44-32. So they outscored them by 12 points there. Other than that, I don't have much to add to that. It was just a good old-fashioned basketball game, and Oklahoma did indeed come out on top. So, Carson, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is a game where we actually both took Oklahoma as expected, even though South Carolina did win the regular season matchup with these 2 teams. That was earlier in the season, about mid-January when that game took place. So we thought Oklahoma was in a better spot and took Oklahoma here, as South Carolina did struggle through the remainder of conference play as well. And Oklahoma, not a great season, just 7-11 in the SEC regular season play. But
Yeah.
ultimately, they've had a little bit of success, mixed success as of late. But ultimately, this was a South Carolina team that really didn't have much to stand on and really much to play for. So no surprise here. Both of us got this pick right. So yeah, not too much to say on this one, as expected.
Sounds good. Well, moving right along here into round 2. This is Kentucky versus Missouri. And after Kentucky went and beat LSU, they actually went and beat the number 8 SEC tournament seed Missouri. This was a close game all around, and Missouri was right there in it till the end. But ultimately, the Kentucky Wildcats go and try and make a push to try and win the SEC championship. They didn't make it that far, unfortunately. Obviously, we'll talk about that in a minute, but they did do enough to beat the Missouri Tigers. So I don't think there's much to add to this game. There was nothing in it that really had my head just like, what's going on here? Because Kentucky has shown streaks of greatness throughout this season. Obviously, they paid a lot of money through NIL to have a really good team. Didn't have the team that they wanted to have, or not as good as they expected, but still a pretty solid team, and they were able to go into the second round of the SEC tournament and pull out a win against Missouri. So Carson, what you got on this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much as evenly matched game as you can get. Both of these teams finished at 10-8 throughout the regular season, so we knew this one was going to be close. We know Missouri won the regular season matchup by 5, so we knew it was going to be pretty close. But ultimately, we both did take Kentucky in this game. Yeah, like you said, nothing too crazy in this game. Pretty evenly matched. I think if these teams were to play, 10 times, I think each team would probably win 5 times each.
Yeah.
That's how evenly matched they are. Two great teams, but ultimately, we know how good historically Kentucky's been. We know how high their basketball standards are, but we also now know how much success Missouri's had over these past couple of years. So, just probably the most evenly matched game of the SEC tournament as a whole.
Yep. I would tend to agree with that. So overall, great game there. And just overall as a whole, the whole SEC tournament was a lot of fun to watch. But anyway, moving right along here to game 6, which would be the second game in the second round. Auburn took on the Tennessee Vols. Auburn trying to make a push to make the NCAA tournament. Again, like we had mentioned right when this started, Auburn did not do enough to make the NCAA tournament. Got the first round in the NIT tournament, and we'll see what they do there. The losers bracket, some might call that, of the NCAA tournament. But anyway, they did not do quite enough to beat the Tennessee Vols here. They were actually leading 32-25 at the half. But in the second half, Tennessee held them to 30 points, and Tennessee almost scored 50 in the second half. They ended up with 47, which any half of basketball, if you can score 47 points, as long as you did half good in the first or second half, whenever the opposite half was, then you're probably going to win the basketball game. Because if you would have had 50, then all of a sudden you're on pace for 100 points going into the second half. So Tennessee did more than enough to take Auburn, and they did beat them by 10. So Auburn just came up a little short. Ament, Tennessee's star player, did have 27, and then Auburn's star player ended with 28 points. So overall, a fun game. Upsetting game if you're an Auburn fan, but nonetheless, it was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a game Auburn had to have if they wanted to move into the March Madness conversation here. We know they need to win at least 2 or 3, but ultimately here they're going to come up short. This is a really, really, really talented Tennessee team. So not surprised here with this at all. I did pick Mississippi State to beat Tennessee. Now, granted, State had to get there first, and they didn't, so there's that too. But
Yeah,
this is just a good example of running out of gas here. Auburn put a lot of energy into getting through Mississippi State, won that game easily, but having to turn around the next day and play this talented Tennessee team, that's going to prove tough for anybody, especially when they're coming in fresh. So no surprise here. Pretty easy game for Tennessee, and yeah, no surprises for me.
Yep. Well, good game overall. But again, Tennessee was able to come out on top against the Auburn Tigers. Moving right along here in game 7, which is the third game of the second round in this SEC tournament. The Ole Miss Rebels take on the Georgia Bulldogs, and Ole Miss Rebels reign supreme again. So already second game of the tournament for them and second win. They upset the Georgia Bulldogs, and it was a 4-point game. But man, Ole Miss was up by 14 going into the second half, and Georgia went on an absolute tear in the second half, ended up scoring 52 points. But Ole Miss almost matched that with 10 points less, about 42. So they had just enough to come out on top here. They're looking they were looking really, really hot in the SEC tournament, and they were maybe even making a push. If they could win that, obviously win the SEC championship, they'd get an automatic bid to at least have a play-in game in the NCAA tournament. So they really wanted to keep things interesting here, and they were able to beat Georgia, who is obviously an NCAA tournament team. So overall, fun game to watch and fun little run here that Ole Miss has been on.
Yeah, this game was a big surprise to me. I expected Georgia to really come out and put it on Ole Miss. This is a very, very good Georgia team. So I think that needs to be said just to show how good of a win this was for
Yeah.
Ole Miss here. I mean, this is a Georgia team that beat Alabama in the regular season. This was a Georgia team that's had some great wins, had a great season, and they were by far and large the favorite here. So Ole Miss winning one game was kind of pretty cool. You say that's an upset and you move on. Then coming out and winning 2 games in the SEC tournament, I don't think anyone had on their radar at all. So, man, just sometimes you just got to tip your cap. But ultimately, I think Georgia is still a better team here, but they just
Yeah.
obviously didn't play like it. Like you said, got down early. The lead of 14 is going to be hard to come back from for any team. But shout out to Ole Miss. It's gritty. They held out the win, and good teams do what they have to win ball games. So that's what you saw here.
Yep, for sure. Moving right along here into the fourth game of the second round of this SEC tournament, 8th game overall. Oklahoma, same with Ole Miss here, trying to make a run, trying to make a name for themselves to hopefully make the NCAA tournament. They knocked off number 6 in the SEC, Texas A&M, by a whopping 20 points. Man, Texas A&M just flat out struggled against Oklahoma. But again, when you get teams like Oklahoma and Ole Miss trying to fight to make the NCAA tournament, obviously they're going to put everything they have into it. And as you can tell, Texas A&M and Georgia both ended up making the NCAA tournament, if I'm not wrong there. And so you could dare say maybe they didn't care a ton. Obviously, they're going to try and win to a certain extent because who doesn't want to win an SEC championship in basketball? It's SEC college basketball has really blown up the past couple of years ever since everybody started getting pretty decent at it all of a sudden. So it's been really fun to watch here. So obviously, again, you do want to try and win the SEC if at all possible, but Texas A&M kind of had the NCAA tournament on lock, so they didn't really feel like that they had to perform. Maybe I'm not 100% sure there. I'm not gonna obviously be the answer because I was not a Texas A&M Aggie and I wasn't at the game, so I don't know. But they did not show up against Oklahoma at all. Oklahoma was beating them 49-27 at the half. Texas A&M turned it on a little bit and beat them by 2 in the second half, but it was still not enough. So they obviously got beat by 20 here, and it was never really close. Obviously, when you're down 49-27 at the half, really hard to make that a close game. But overall, not really a close game. Fun game to watch because it was an upset, but that's all I got about it.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. I'm a big believer in A&M and Buckyball and the new style of basketball they got going on over there. So I really expected them to compete in this game. But ultimately, like you said, you really laid out a good picture of it. That first half deficit, it's hard to come back from, especially when you have a team like Oklahoma who's playing for their season because that's real, that's valid.
Yeah.
The type of ability you can unlock as a player and as a team and momentum you can gain really does come out when you feel like your backs are against the wall. And you said it great. This is a Texas A&M team that knew they were pretty safe into the NCAA tournament here. So when you have that mindset versus a team that's playing for their season backed up against the wall, and they also come out hot in the first half here, there's really just nothing else you can do here. But great game by Oklahoma, big statement made, and yeah, I think that's all I got.
Sounds good. Well, moving right along here, we are going to go to game 9, which is the start of the third round of this tournament. Kentucky's run stopped, ended there with an 8-point loss to the Florida Gators. Florida was obviously the favorite to win the SEC championship. Ultimately, they did not, and we'll get to that a little bit further along. But overall, it was a good game. Kentucky stayed in it, but it was never like Kentucky like just needs to make this shot and they're taking the lead. It was like, we're going to keep this from becoming double digit lead. And that's really where it ended. They couldn't really there was not a lot of pushing and shoving there. It was like, Kentucky goes down and hits a 3, Florida matches it with a 3. So obviously if Florida matches every time you score, you're not going to be able to make any ground on it. They were able to keep it within single digits, but they could not ultimately beat the Florida Gators.
Yeah, I think honestly one of the biggest overlooked things in this game is keeping Florida to just 71 points as a whole. That's hard to do with how good this Florida team is. So Kentucky did
Yep.
compete, but ultimately just offensively they were not able to put enough on there. So defensively, Kentucky had a great game. I think there's very few teams in the nation that have held Florida to 71 points, but ultimately the better team won here. And like going back to earlier, good teams find ways to win even when they don't have it. Florida did not have it all in this game like they normally do, like we've seen from them this season, but they found a way to win to move on into the semifinals. So got to tip your cap.
Yep. 100% agree. So moving along to game 10 here. The third matchup between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Vanderbilt Commodores. It was the rubber match of the series. Tennessee beat Vandy at Vandy during the regular season, and Vandy beat Tennessee at Tennessee. So it was 100% a rubber match here between these in-state rivals. Vandy was able to reign supreme like I knew they were or knew they would. Carson had his doubts. Obviously, he likes to doubt Vandy until he can doubt no more. But hey, as long as I keep proving them wrong, I'm right there for it. So, nonetheless, Vandy did beat Tennessee 75-68. It was actually tied at 31 at the half, but Vandy was ultimately able to outscore Tennessee 44-37 in the second half, and they held Ament to, I think it was around 11 points, and he went like 1 for 13 from the field, and the rest of his points came from free throws. So when you can halt their best scorer, that bodes well for you. And you could see that there in that game. Duke Miles was the leading scorer for Vandy. He had 30 points. So that's when you can stop their best scorer, and when you can have a guy that scores 30, then that's a good recipe for a win, and that is what happened here.
Yep. I did have my doubts here. I thought Tennessee would get the best of Vanderbilt here. Vanderbilt's been a little hit or miss this season. We know what they're capable of when they're on, but they were a little hit or miss too. We also have seen that with Tennessee. You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Tennessee-Alabama game, where Alabama won this game in Knoxville and only scored, I believe, 73 points, give or take. So Tennessee has had their moments just as much as Vanderbilt has. So
Yeah.
another low-scoring game here from both teams. Very gritty, strong defensive teams here. So great game by both teams.
Really added a lot of character to the SEC tournament. And so got to tip your cap to Vandy. They pulled it out, and Vanderbilt really wanted this one pretty bad. So great game to watch.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great game nonetheless. And obviously getting to prove Carson wrong is a lot of fun. So hope they keep doing that even throughout the NCAA tournament, but only time will tell. So moving on right along to game 11 versus Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss went on to win that game by 1 point. That score is a lot more deceiving than what happened in that whole game. Ole Miss looked like the better team for the first half. They were up by 5. No, they were up by 6, excuse me, to end the first half. And Alabama was able to outscore them in the second half 38-33. So although it was a pretty close game, Ole Miss just looked like the better team, which was very surprising there. And Alabama just could not quite pull the right strings to be able to pull off the not upset, just a regular win for Alabama. But again, kind of with Carson here, like Tennessee and Vandy have been a little wishy-washy this whole season. Alabama has definitely had their fair share of wishy-washiness because, they'll either come out and score 120 points or they will come out and score 79, which 79 isn't that bad. But if you can hold an Alabama team to 79 points and you can score obviously more than them, you will come out on top 100% of the time. So, yeah, good math, right? Yeah, obviously. So overall, it was a fun game to watch. Maybe not so fun for Carson to watch, but nonetheless, again, Ole Miss was pushing for a hopeful NCAA tournament berth. Alabama already had one on lock and ended up with the number 3 seed. So not too shabby, and Alabama was able to get some rest. So I dare say that it might have been worth it. But Carson, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, going back to some of the things we mentioned earlier here, Alabama very safely in NCAA tournament. Obviously, you want the SEC tournament win, but was not, I would say, in the forefront of this team's minds, like Ole Miss, who really had to play for their season here. Philon had a great game at 28. We saw Holloway, who's at the bit of a mixed street right now, we'll say it that way, until the investigation's over with. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen that. He might not be playing the rest of the season. But if you haven't seen that in the news, I don't know where you've been, but there's that going on. But anyway, he had 18 points in this game, and Cheryl ended up having 14 as well. So you saw Alabama put their best scorers out there, and they had decent games. It's just ultimately Alabama's defense continues to struggle. I mean, I know defensively, Holloway's not the best defender. We let up a lot of easy points here, and typical of Nate Oates' offense, right? If they're falling, it's great, top of the world, right? But if they're not, then our defense is not going to be enough to pull out wins individually, other than a very, 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 very few rare cases this season. So this was when you had an offense that was performing decently, but ultimately a decent offense isn't going to win when Alabama's defense plays as poorly as it did in this game. So tip your cap to Ole Miss, and like you said, Bama got some rest for the NCAA tournament. We'll see if that pays off here tomorrow.
Yep, we will indeed, and we will recap that game more than likely on probably Monday, but it'll be posted to you guys on Wednesday. But moving right along here to game 12 of the SEC tournament, getting closer and closer to see who won that SEC championship game. Arkansas comes up with a 3-point win against Oklahoma. Oklahoma was this close. If they would have won that game, most brackets, most people that did bracket predictions had them in the tournament, but they couldn't do it. They lost to Darius Acuff Jr. and the Arkansas Razorbacks, which, to be fair, really, really good team. And they're a sneaky good team to win. I think they could win the national championship. I don't know if they will. I don't really think they will. But if you got Acuff going for 30 every game, really hard to mess that up. So as long as he keeps fire, I don't see Arkansas slowing down anytime soon. They were able to beat the hot Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma took a 2-point lead into the into the halftime. But ultimately, Arkansas was able to outscore them by 5 in the second half, 40-45. So obviously, if you do the math, Arkansas won 82, Oklahoma won 79, or scored 79. They lost 82-79. But Darius Acuff Jr. ended up scoring 37 points. So obviously, if you have one player score that much, then more than likely that is a good product to win the basketball game.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all you can say here is just wow. I mean, I was watching this game and there was nothing Oklahoma could do in their wildest dreams to stop him from scoring. He just wanted it that much more than everyone else, but he's also just got a raw athletic ability to where he can pretty much do whatever he wants with the basketball and nobody's really going to stop him.
Yep.
They were falling. I mean, it was incredible in here. Like we'll see with some other games after this. I mean, Arkansas will just found ways to score this whole tournament. Just very impressive here, and it's hard to win ball games when you let one guy play for 40 minutes and those 40 minutes score 37 points. So just wow, great game. But also Oklahoma, shout out to Oklahoma. They really played for their season, represented their state and their school well. So
yep. I agree. Now, moving on to the semifinals. We got the Vanderbilt Commodores versus the Florida Gators. And Vanderbilt whooped that trick. Beat the Florida Gators 91-74. It was never even close, Carson. Never. And they doubted us. They doubted the Vanderbilt Commodores. And they're just going to do it again in the NCAA tournament when they meet in the Sweet 16. Mark my words. But Carson obviously doesn't agree. We've already decided that Carson is a certified Vandy hater when it comes to predicting them. Loves a good basketball game, loves a good football game, loves a good baseball game. But he'll pick against them every single time. Anyway, now let's get into the actual game. Vanderbilt looked really good this game. I think they shot 50% from 3, if I'm not mistaken, or really close to that. So when you are able to hit that many threes and keep almost a 50% clip, you're going to be hard to beat. Vandy hasn't scored 91 in a couple. And it's been a while this season. They did start off the season having a couple 100-point games, but they really went off, and they have the kryptonite for the Florida Gators. Earlier in the season, there was a 7-point swing on one drive for Florida that kind of cost Vandy the game at Vandy. Who's to say Vandy might still would have lost there, but nonetheless, they ended up beating them pretty good in the SEC tournament, and may see them again in the NCAA tournament. Overall, really fun game to watch, especially for me, and I think for anybody, unless you're a Florida Gators fan. So,
yeah, I think this was the shock of the tournament for me. I expected this game to be good, very competitive. Did not expect Vanderbilt here to come out and win in the fashion they did. You know, I'm not more surprised that Vandy won the game because I knew Vandy was capable, but I think the fashion in which they won this game was very, very surprising here. And this is a Florida team that came into the tournament, put up 71 points against Kentucky and 74 against Vandy. So obviously not firing on all cylinders there for Florida, because this is a team that is used to scoring a lot more than the low 70s per game here. So not too sure what's going on there with Florida here. I'm hoping they can pull it around, represent the SEC well in the tournament. But Vandy, wow, they put up a heck of a game. 91 points is hard to do, especially in any SEC tournament game, but especially against Florida. So great game here, and they came out and made a statement.
Yep. So overall, fun game to Fun game to watch again, unless you were a Florida Gator. Moving on to game 14, the last game until the championship. Arkansas versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss almost beat Arkansas and moved on to the SEC championship. Just like the last team they played, was it? I think it was, hang on. Let's look at this. I don't want to tell you wrong. Yeah, Oklahoma. Sorry. Ooh, brain fart there. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to be wrong. Anyway, both teams only lost by 3, but Darius Ake Jr. again just was able to hit the dagger to win the game. So, great game, great heart from Ole Miss. This was a game they had to have if they wanted to even be considered for the NCAA tournament. Obviously they lost, and obviously they're not in the NCAA tournament. So, great game overall. Again, great heart for Ole Miss, but again, Darius Acuff Jr. comes in clutch and beats Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think this was as good of a semifinal game as we could have asked for here. You have a team that's got a legendary coach and an amazing talent, and a team that arguably cannot miss a shot versus an Ole Miss team with mediocre talent. I mean, every SEC school has good talent these days, just with how reputable the conference is and all the resources these schools can provide, but not talent compared to Arkansas. And they just wanted it so bad. They wanted their season to continue. They wanted to get to the championship game, prove a point here. So just a great storyline here for this tournament, and just an ultimately great game, hard fought game. And I think it went just as good as it could have gone for both teams, and Arkansas just pulled it out.
Yep, great game, great game. Going on to the final game, and this is just upsetting to look at. Vanderbilt versus Arkansas. Vanderbilt did not have what it took to beat down Arkansas and Darius Acuff Jr. again. Brazil, however you pronounce his name, also had a great game against us. And he also had a great game against us in the regular season. But this score does not do it justice. Me and Carson were actually at that game. Really fun game to be at. Although the Vandy boys lost, me and Carson still enjoyed our time and got to sit pretty close to the court. So that was a lot of fun as well, and got to sit behind some of Vanderbilt's O-line. And I made one of them laugh. So, hey, a win's a win there. But nonetheless, obviously wish Vandy could have came away with the SEC championship game, but still made the NCAA tournament as a 5 seed. So not too worried about it. That's in the back of my mind now. Always would be nice to win an SEC championship again. But Darius Acuff Jr. is probably the best player, best guard in the nation. And he showed it here, and he could not miss. Vandy was down by 2 at the half because of a crazy shot by Darius Acuff Jr. I'm almost positive. And then right during the second half, every single shot he shot looked like it was going to go in. If not, they got a rebound, and Brazil hit a 3. So the second half, first half, I saw a lot of people saying this is probably one of the best halves of basketball they've ever seen, or at least for this season. And I would tend to agree with that. It was a really good half. Second half, still a lot of fun. Vandy could just went on a cold streak there the last 7 minutes of the game. Because I think, if I'm not wrong, it was a tie game, I think at like the 6-minute mark or something like that. So Vandy was well into this game, just like Ole Miss, just like Oklahoma, but they could not hit a shot thereafter. They got up by 5, Vandy did, in the second half, and Arkansas called a timeout. And then after that, Vandy they just couldn't do it. So they came up a little short, but Arkansas reigned supreme here. And that's all I got.
Yeah, like you said, this was a great game to be at here. We had a blast, enjoyed our time there at Bridgestone. This was an Arkansas team that could not miss from anywhere on the court. It felt like if they just turned and threw up the basketball blindfolded, it probably would have found net here. So, I mean, this was it's one of those things where if you're Vanderbilt, you're like, what else do you do? Like what
Right.
else could we have possibly done? I mean, there was situation after situation where Vandy's playing great lockdown defense, but ultimately just Arkansas is just putting up shots and hitting them, and that's one of the most frustrating things I feel like as a fan of a team that is on the receiving end of this, and as just kind of a general basketball fan. You kind of feel for that team. What do you do when a guy is just shooting great from the field? I mean, he's just putting up shot after shot, and he puts 30 up on you. And I do agree. I think he's probably the best guard in NCAA basketball right now. I think anyone that watches highlights or watched this Vanderbilt Arkansas game could make that point as well.
Welcome
just-
back to the rapid fire segment. Ooh. All right, Carson, what do we have today?
Alrighty, we've got 5 baseball series picks coming at you for this weekend. First up, we have number 10, North Carolina State versus number 11, Florida State. Who you got?
Give me Florida State to beat North Carolina State with the 1 seed upset. Why, you may ask? Heck if I know. Give me Florida State.
No, not this time. Florida State's had their issues with football, right? So they're hoping baseball is their comeback sport. Nope. Give me the Wolfpack. Give me the Wolfpack in this series. Beating Florida State 2 out of 3. I don't think they get the sweep, but I think they get 2 out of 3. Moving on, the series of the weekend, number 2, Texas at number 5, Auburn.
Give me the Auburn Tigers to upset Texas. Texas is not as good as you think they are, buddy. Well, I don't know if you think they're good or not, but I'm just talking to everybody out there. I think Auburn's going to take this one, and I think they're going to take it and take it all the way. Horns down.
Both teams are at 18-2. It's in Auburn. This is tough. I'm going to go with the Longhorns to take 2 out of 3 in Auburn at their house. I just can't pick Auburn. There's just something in me, and I think both teams are really talented. This is definitely the series of the weekend by far, but I think Auburn gets the Friday night game, so tomorrow night, but I think Texas takes Saturday and the rubber match on Sunday. Now, moving on, another great series here. We have number 7, Georgia, who's 18-4, at Texas A&M, who's ranked 23 at 17-3. Who you got?
Give me the Georgia Bulldogs after they robbed Tennessee's pimp job home run to win the series. It was at Georgia, but I have faith in the Georgia Bulldogs. So give me the Georgia Bulldogs.
We're really not aligning on picks this weekend, Eli. But that's
all right.
okay. I'm going to take Texas A&M. I love the Aggies baseball program. I love what they're doing. They've only lost 3 games this season, but Georgia is hot with a bunch of momentum after they robbed home run to take the series against Tennessee. But staying consistent here with my series winners, I think Texas A&M gets the series, not the sweep. I think Georgia gets the Saturday game here. So moving on, we have 2 left. So we're going to go a little bit of a curveball. We have number 17, Oregon State versus UC Irvine.
I'm going to hit that curveball 480. Give me Oregon State. That's all.
Eli, I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. We're going to align for this pick here. I'm going to take Oregon State as well. Moving on to our last pick of the weekend. I have a good feeling I know where you're going to go with this pick, but we have the unranked Vanderbilt Commodores at number 6 Mississippi State, who sits at 17-4. The Commodores sit at 13-9. Eli, who takes the series this weekend between State and the Commodores?
Give me. Wish I could do it, but I can't. The Mississippi State Bulldogs. I can't pick Vandy. I just can't do it. After watching them play in the midweek game, our pitching has not done us any favors. I think Fennell, great guy. I don't think he should be the Friday starter. I think we're going to lose Friday. I think we're going to win on Saturday when Nadu, however you pronounce it. I think we're going to win on Saturday when he pitches, but I think we're going to lose the rubber match because they posted on Instagram the graphic at the top, the first three, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday starters. We don't even have a Sunday starter decided yet. So, nonetheless, I hope and I wish and I pray that Vandy can win because we have not done the midweek games any favors. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And got to lead with my mind sometimes and not my heart all the times. I would love to pick Vandy in everything, but what kind of podcast co-host would that be to not pick who you ultimately think is going to win the series? So, unfortunately, it's going to have to be the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
You called me a Vandy hater on this episode. You said you enjoyed for me to be proved wrong.
Yep.
Well, not so fast, my friend. You're going to be the one proved wrong this weekend. Give me the Vanderbilt Commodores to take 2 out of 3 in Starkville this weekend. Number 6 in the nation. It doesn't matter. Nobody hits so far like Vanderbilt has been hitting. Yes, their pitching is horrible. My goodness. But 16... Nobody pitches like them either. That is completely fair to say. Let up 16 runs against LSU. Couldn't buy a strike. But guess what? Them Nashville boys know how to hit a baseball. New hitting coach Esposito doing wonders up there in Nashville. Give me Vanderbilt to go in and sweep. You heard me. Get the brooms. Sweep Mississippi State. And after this week, Vandy is ranked in the top 20. You heard it here. They won the series against LSU. They're going to come into Starkville and put it on Mississippi State. 13-9, doesn't matter. Lost a couple midweek games, doesn't matter. Vandy needs a statement and to prove that they can play in the SEC, and I think this is the perfect weekend to do it.
If Vandy sweeps, I'll never pick against them in baseball ever again. You have
I'm
my
clipping
word.
that. Clipping that.
You have my word.
Clipping it.
But
All righty.
it happen.
Well, with that, this has been another great episode here. Episode 19 of the College Lineup coming at you. If you want to see the recap summary of this episode and our picks, it'll be on Instagram at the College Lineup. Feel free to follow us there. This is going to be posted on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, so feel free to check us out on those other channels if you haven't seen us there yet. So, Eli, as always, it's been a lot of fun. We talked about some great SEC basketball, and we talked about some great baseball picks upcoming this weekend. I look forward to seeing you back here on the next episode of the College Lineup.